I'm Robin Gagnon.
And I'm Eric Gagnon, and we sell restaurants. We started the nation's largest restaurant brokerage firm, We Sell Restaurants, over a decade ago. You can find us online at WeSellRestaurants.com.
We're on your radio once a week with the leading authorities in this industry, talking about subjects trending in the restaurant business. Tweet your own questions on our topic while we're on the air. You can hit us up at our Twitter handle. It's Sell Restaurants. Or post on our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/We Sell Restaurants. If we don't get to your question, guess what? We'll follow up with you on social media.
Our goal is to satisfy your appetite for acquisition, feed the need for restaurant reality, and serve up a recipe for business success. If you have any ideas or any comments for the show, my email is Eric, E-R-I-C, at WeSellRestaurants.com, and send me a note.
Today, we're talking about making the leap from corporate America to the restaurant business. Are you a corporate refugee restaurant wannabe? On this show, we're talking to two panelists who have walked in your shoes. We have real-life owners that hung up their annual six-figure incomes to have control over the four walls of their restaurant. They went from a life on the corporate gravy train to making gravy at a place of their own.
And for that today, our first guest is David Yu, owner and quote-unquote ice cream dude from Davy's Ice Cream. David graduated from Parsons School of Design in New York City and previously worked as a graphic designer before seeking out an alternative medium for his creativity. David started his own brand of ultra-premium handmade ice cream, all from scratch, inside his shop in the East Village in New York City. Using only the highest quality milk and cream from Battenkill Valley Creamery, and pasteurized his own formulated ice cream mix in-house that is lower in sugar and more full in natural flavors. David, thank you for joining us today.
Hi.
Okay, well, our second guest is Tiffany Ellman, co-owner of the Ophelia Restaurant Group. Tiffany co-founded and developed the Sam Moon Home Decor Store, a multi-million-dollar enterprise within the privately owned Sam Moon Group in Dallas. She later transitioned to premier luxury retailing in the specialty retail store sector of the Neiman Marcus Group, training under the store's renowned executive development programs for both department managers and merchandising. She left that corporate world behind several years ago to open 3 of the Dallas Design District's most sought-after restaurants, along with her husband, Richard Ellman. Collectively, the Ophelia Restaurant Group includes Oak, Pakpo, am I saying that right? I have to double-check with Tiffany, and Belly and Trumpet Restaurant in Dallas. Tiffany, make sure I have the name of your restaurant correct, and thank you for joining with us today.
Glad to be here. It's actually Pakpo.
Pakpo. I knew I needed to ask. Thanks so much. And we are so excited to have you guys on board because, after all, making that leap from the corporate ranks can be pretty darn formidable when you're looking out on it. So, David, let's start with you. What made you want to do this?
For me, it was, I kind of wanted to try something new. I wanted to still express my creativity, but I wanted to be a little bit more hands-on. In my previous studio, I was working in fashion advertising, doing a lot of photo shoots and a lot of work on the computer. And for me, I just wanted to kind of take a step back away from that, and then try something new, basically.
Good. And following that answer, Tiffany, why did you think that making the leap into the entrepreneurship world, that the restaurant was the right thing to do versus a different financial venture?
I think there's a point in your life where you decide to follow your passions, and this opportunity arose, and I got married and met someone who shared the same passion as I did, and this was just an opportunity, to do something else that I really, really had an innate love for. So that's pretty much what happened.
I think that's great. So David is owning a restaurant then, what you kind of expected when you left the corporate world behind?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Tiffany. Weigh in on that.
No, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, David.
No. Sorry. You can take that one.
Okay. It is absolutely not what I expected. I did not have restaurant experience in the past, and so I think that you definitely, entering an industry, you have some preconceived notions, and you always end up getting surprised. I think it's extremely rewarding. It's a lot tougher than I imagined it would ever be. It's a lot more I guess, organic than I ever thought it would be, and the people management is a lot more difficult than I ever thought it would be compared to the corporate sector.
David, you want to add anything to that?
I mean, for sure. I mean, for me, I wanted to, ultimately just make ice cream. And, that was like kind of my dreams. Like, I'm going to make ice cream really good, the best way possible. And then, I realized very quickly it's maybe like 30% actual ice cream making and development, and 70% everything else, all the overhead, all the business management, hiring employees and training and all that stuff. So that stuff did catch me, by surprise. But it's all a learning experience. So every day I learn more and more, and I'm just kind of powering through my first year now, and hopefully have everything kind of figured out by next year.
So let me ask you, because Eric and I are both corporate refugees as well, who went out into the world and started our own business. Holding down that corporate job often means this great, very steady 6-figure income. You don't have to worry about whether there's money in the bank. You've got the paid vacation, sick leave, lots of staffing. That's the upside. But what's the downside of working in corporate America that made each one of you think about leaving for your own business? And Tiffany, maybe you can kick us off there.
Sure. I think, part of the downside is that you're working for someone else. And so you can be passionate about your growth there, but it's not your product. And I think it's a whole different ballgame when it is your product and it's something that you created and it's your baby and you're raising it, from start to finish. And so there's something there. I mean, the intensity of the passion, it's just not comparable to when you're working for someone else in the corporate sector.
How about you, David?
I mean, I totally agree with that. It's you have a boss, and I've always worked hard for my previous bosses and everything, but ultimately it kind of came to a point where I kind of wanted to take off and apply everything I've ever learned into my own project, essentially. So it's this is all. My business is, it's everything I've ever learned, basically.
Now, both of you, I mean, you're in corporate world, you're working, you're starting to think about, hey, maybe there's something better outside of corporate, start think about your concept. How did you come up with your concept and especially a winning one like both of you have had? I mean, do you start on nights and weekends, you go home and start drafting business plans and talking to people? How did that come alive for you guys? Tiffany, you want to start with?
Sure. Actually, it really happened a little bit organically. My husband and I, when we did not have children, traveled extensively, and we always felt like we were coming across concepts that were just so clever and ingenious, and we just felt like the Dallas market in particular lacked some of these really innovative restaurant ideas. And so we would always toy around. I'm sure, many people can attest to having conversations, casual conversations, and saying, one day we should open up this, or one day it'd be really cool to have this kind of shop, in Dallas or something like that. And I'm lucky to have a partner that acts upon his ideas. And so little do we know, we were discussing about an idea that we had, and the next day my husband said, "Oh, well, I found a property, to put our restaurant in," and went ahead with that. So, we toy back and forth with ideas, but he's an executor, and so it was just an opportune moment in time.
So that's great, Tiffany, because you're actually in the business with your husband. But then what about other friends and family? What was the reaction? Did some of your friends and family be like, "Oh, Tiffany, I don't know, you're on this great career track. What are you thinking, girl?"
Well, actually, restaurants have been my secret passion for a really, really long time. So my parents weren't really surprised. However, I was climbing up a ladder, and I really did love my job at the time. And so there was some hesitation and some fear and some anxiety on both ends of the spectrum, on my end of the spectrum as well as my friends and family. But, at some point in time, you just have to take a leap of faith, and that's just what we did.
Now, about you, David, how did that come about, this specialty ice cream of yours?
I mean, I was kind of in the same situation. I worked at a pretty legit studio in New York City with great clients and everything. But I left my studio in September last year, and I just 2 years ago, and I spent I worked hard on the business plan and research and all that, and I realized there wasn't a market in New York City for, all handmade ice cream. There's very limited compared to like out in the West Coast in Oregon and Los Angeles and stuff. So, I worked on the business plan, kind of figured all that stuff out. I've never had a business before or worked in food before, so it's all a new experience for me. And, I just kind of really went into it and just, a lot of research on my own and kind of just figured it out. And, it's kind of working out.
So I want to ask whether some of that experience that you had, David, coming out of a different background, did that experience and training in the big business world help as you did your own startup? And if so, kind of what are some ways that kind of aided you in your development of your own business?
I mean, for sure. I mean, I've never managed employees before, but, I used to art direct, so, I managed designers underneath me. So there's a lot of things that kind of overlap in very strange ways. And, I actually run my shop and my kitchen more as a design studio than like a kitchen. And because, I've never had that experience. But it's interesting. It all overlaps and it all applies somehow, in a very strange way.
How about you, Tiffany? Did the world of Neiman Marcus help you kind of in your next life career choice?
I definitely think that it did. I hearken retail very similar to the restaurant industry and the hospitality industry because you're still dealing with a product, you're still dealing with inventory, you're dealing with marketing to consumer, pricing your inventory the correct way, dealing with customer psychology, trying to entice them to come in, and ultimately dealing with customer service. So I do feel like both industries that I've been involved in do mirror each other, but I think the one thing about being in the restaurant industry is that you're constantly learning every single day, especially when you open something up for yourselves. You're not exposed to different aspects of each business that you might, that you weren't exposed to before. So it's very challenging. You're surprised every day, but you also learn through adversity. So it's been rewarding.
Now, let me ask you something about, we talked a bit about the beginning of the show about, you guys coming from a big company where there's a paycheck coming every couple weeks and everything like that. And, even if you're head of department, you're only responsible for a small part of a budget or everything. And now you are an entrepreneur. You're responsible for the revenues, the expenses, everything. How hard of a transition was it for both of you to actually are able to, focus on sales, expenses, and actually making money for the entire organization? That's what you guys have to do now. David, you take that on first?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, this is my first year, so it's, it's a lot. Owning a business, you have to kind of do a little bit of everything. Hopefully it gets to a point where I can, easily budget, like figure out all the budgeting and all that, and really optimize the business, over time.
Are you getting some help right now to help you with the accounting and some areas that you may not be comfortable with?
It's pretty much all. It's just me kind of doing everything, and again, I think with time comes experience. So over time, I think it will get easier and easier, and then I can get like the right people in place. How
about you, Tiffany?
Yeah, I do definitely think that it's quite a difference. You can't in the corporate world if you have issues or anything like that, you can always kind of pin it off and have someone else deal with it or have someone else help you. But when you're dealing with your own business, you can't do that. And I think, the first year can either make or break. And then even if it's a making year, the second year, is that year where you're coming into a lot more challenges because you're no longer new, you're no longer fresh. And, you don't have the budget that a corporation has. So you end up doing a lot of things by yourself. And if you don't know how to do them, you have to figure out how, because you might not have the resources to hire someone to help you. So it's definitely challenging.
So does this, having left the corporate world, going into the restaurant business, Tiffany, does that sort of satisfy an internal need you have for creativity and entrepreneurship that couldn't be met in the former big business type role?
Yeah, for sure. Because your ideas are not limited, and I think that your ideas are limited on a corporate basis, but I can come up with anything and try to implement it, and if it doesn't work, then I can turn it around the next day. And I don't I don't shoot down my own ideas unless they're really, really bad and I have a moment of clarity, but, I think it's a unique opportunity to be able to implement things that you think are great ideas, and it's also a unique opportunity to shut things down that don't work on an immediate basis. So it's really interesting.
I totally agree with that, because I think one of the most frustrating things for me in corporate America was that I've always been this person with lots and lots of ideas, and the amount of time it took to get those up and down the corporate chain of command, to get somebody to buy in and get it done. And, tonight, Eric and I can have an idea tonight and we can implement it tomorrow. And to your point, we can shut it off next week if it doesn't seem to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how about you, David? You already have the creative juice flowing because of your previous background. So what is that satisfying for you? Does it still meet that need and your entrepreneurial need? Is that also something that is exciting you right now, or what's the transition on that?
I mean, it's the transition. The transition has been hard. It was difficult, but I'm definitely at a place now. I'm definitely happier. Again, like you can do, you can experiment now. Ultimately, I can't do whatever I want still, but it's a lot of experimenting, a lot of creativity, and that's very enjoyable for sure.
So let me ask you this, because both of you now, you've got some time under your belt, David. You said that first year was kind of tough, and you're in that follow-up year. What advice would you have for people listening to our show? Because we get a lot of listeners. They want to open restaurants, and many of them, they call us as restaurant brokers Friday afternoon as kind of a favorite time. You can hear they're over a long lunch and they're calling us up to go, hey, what about this restaurant? Because they're ready to jump ship. So what advice would you give them if they are looking now to make the leap? Would you say have a certain savings amount in mind before you leave, line up these kind of mentors or boards, or go work in the business first? Are there mistakes you made that you don't want our listeners to repeat? And maybe, Tiffany, you can start.
Yes, there's definitely mistakes that I've made. We've opened 4 businesses in the past 2 years, and 3 of them have been successful. And one of them, we had to shut it down 4 months into it when we realized that it was not going to be the right concept for the area. And so I would definitely suggest, definitely going into the industry, if you can intern or just waiter or do something to really study a business from that perspective, from a perspective of, you're going to open something. I think it's different. Even if, you just go, for a month or two and hostess or host, I think you can study a lot of things and figure out how you really, really want to do things right, because you really only get one opportunity to do that. And I also think you definitely have to do have to have quite a bit of savings at your belt, or have investors that will back you through thick and thin. Those are my 2 recommendations.
Those are great ones. How about you, David?
To add on to that, I would say be prepared to, problem solve. It is a business. You are making food, but ultimately it's all problem solving. In terms of what for me, it's like, what flavors am I going to make? How am I going to make it? Production schedule, and you need to adjust on the fly.
Okay, I think that's all good advice.
It is. So, based on this advice you just gave listeners and everything, so you're saying, if I love cooking, or I was a great bartender in college, and now that's my fond memories of that, and I'm just going to quit my corporate job to go into buying a restaurant, it may not be good enough to be successful. Would that be a true statement, Tiffany?
I definitely think so. I think that even if you are talented at one thing and you think that that's your passion, opening a restaurant is so much more than just that. And so you have to make sure that you're covered not only from a talent perspective, but also, the other little business minutia.
Now, David, you have a different opinion, because I know you love ice cream, and you went in there because you love it. So you agree with that or not? Yeah, be prepared. It's not just about ice cream.
it's about business management. It's about marketing, and I'm in the kitchen. I have to spend my time in the kitchen developing recipes while I'm also out in the front, managing the shop and setting the tone for my customers and everything. So it's a lot. It's an all-in-one job, and you have to be prepared to work, basically. A lot of work.
So, Tiffany, I know one thing, when we asked you guys to give us some questions, one thing that you mentioned to us was the impact of publicity, social media, and internet review sites like Yelp impacting the flow of traffic to the business, as well as critics. Weigh in with us a little bit about that and how you manage that as an entrepreneur.
That's an ongoing challenge. I have a love-hate relationship with Yelp. I have a love-hate relationship with critics. I have a love-hate relationship with OpenTable. I think critics, both professional and non-professional, really shed light on things that you may not be privy to. So if I'm not in the restaurant every day, I make sure that I read every single review. Some people exaggerate their reviews. Some people are brutally honest. And I think, it's your job as a restaurant owner to really take and read everything very seriously, because you might discover things that are happening in your restaurant that you don't know that are happening in your restaurant, especially when you're there, because sometimes when you're there, things can be perfect, and the day that you decide to have a movie night out or something like that, things can go drastically wrong. So I think critics, both professional and non-professional alike, that's your customer, and you have to listen to them.
David, what about you and Yelp and company?
For sure. I mean, Yelp is it's interesting. I don't concentrate too much on Yelp. For me, I like to get around by word of mouth. So I try to engage with my customers. I'm at the shop every day still. I'm there to kind of observe everything. But Yelp does have its place. It's very big. It's very powerful. So it can't really be ignored. And you do have to pick and choose exactly what you take from it.
I think that absolutely is a great place to leave this segment, because you guys are giving us such good information about how you have individually made that leap from corporate America and lots of job security into owning a restaurant of your own. This is Eric and Robin Gagnon. We're the Restaurant Brokers. We have been talking about making the leap from the corporate ranks to restaurant ownership as we satisfy your appetite for acquisition, feed the need for restaurant reality, and serve up a recipe for business success. Stay tuned. We'll have more on this topic right after this short break.